I think Elrond is going to return October. They released Nazgul in October, and then you announced the Witch King end of October, early November. Okay, let's talk what if and factions. Balin would make a little bit more sense to me, and I think that will be coming by the end of the year too. And welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. As you can see, I am on a prolific predicting streak. We got a bunch right in the last video, not really. However, it is a new year, and I would like to make a 2024 speculation prediction video. Got a little help from this guy right here. I don't think we're gonna need it though. Let's get started. I want to first talk about some MISC items. We got a bunch of categories here. The same, it's a little bit different than last time, but content, progression systems, character releases, and then MISC. And I want to start with MISC. I think we are going to get a Journey Ahead style post sometime in January. It's going to lay out a rough roadmap for the year, maybe not the whole year, but part of the year. We're going to see sort of that immediate stuff. Maybe we'll get some information about some things I think will be coming in Q1 of 2024. That's kind of something that I want to see. I think we should see it because the road ahead in December was not, or the journey ahead in December was not really that great. I don't think they're going to call it a journey ahead style post, but I think we are essentially going to get a lot more information about what's coming because the journey ahead post was sort of so light on that particular stuff, right? Some other things. I think we are going to get 2 Shadow Legendaries back to back. Kind of like how we just did 2 light legendaries back to back. I'm working on this, not working. I have a pet theory, I should say, where basically Shattered Timeline characters used to connect factions between legendaries. We see this right now. I don't know if this pattern is going to hold. I think it's a really good, I cannot spell. I think it's a really good idea where basically, right, Shattered Timeline, Balin Squad basically works as a home for elves who have Elrond and for dwarves who have, now they have Thorin. I think it's a great idea to kind of like be this sort of catch-all team that works and can bridge and be synergistic between 2 different factions like that. I really like that idea. So I'm kind of, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm not saying that that's the only thing Shattered Timeline characters are going to be used for, but I think that is a good use of Shattered Timeline characters. Kind of builds out these big maps and synergies between, you know, a bunch of different characters that we are starting to see here. I think that's all I want to put in the MISC for now. We might circle back and put some more stuff in there. Let's focus on the content side of things. What I think is going to be coming out in 2024. I think multi-squad PvP is still slated for Q1 of this year. I know they didn't talk about it in the journey ahead, so people are like, well, it's canceled. They're not doing it anymore. They've run into a bunch of technical, XYZ, but because they didn't mention it, therefore it's not happening. I'm not so sure I believe that. I think this has been on the roadmap for a long time now. It could be delayed because of some technical stuff, but I do think this is basically the next thing that's coming out. I would prefer it comes sooner rather than later. And I think it'll be a good addition to the game. I'm very curious how they're going to do it. This is something that they talked about even when they released the game. All right, more content. I think that the next thing after multi-squad PvP is actually going to be guild versus guild. And I think this will come out in Q2, Q3. I think this drives a lot of spending between the top end sort of Krakens and players and whatnot, that little bit of competitive edge. Both multi-squad and guild versus guild do that. And we'll talk about progression systems next, obviously, right? But I think that this is going to be a big driver for the competitiveness in this game. And that makes sense to add this in here. There's also, somebody made a comment, I think it was on the Reddit AMA, one of the developers that was just like, you're going to be sick of PvP or something like that. Or we have so much PvP content slated to come out. What I would really like to see is that the guild versus guild has some sort of thematic element to it. In Galaxy of Heroes, it's kind of like you just place your stuff in territories and then and then you attack, and you've got like walls of different defensive teams, right? I don't know. I think that's kind of a little bit, gets pretty stale eventually. I think it would be cool to sort of place the guild versus guild thematically within the universe. I've been talking to Celtic all afternoon about some of these stuff, and one idea that he mentioned for sure that would be cool is, you know, some sort of battle of the 5 armies. I mean, Pelennor Fields, again, just like having some sort of theme or setting where you can have this type of guild v guild. Maybe certain squads get different bonuses. I don't know, but I would like to see that sooner rather than later. And then sort of speaking, again, similar to Swigo, I do think there will be more guild PvE content, not in the form of raids. So I think there will be guild PvE, something like similar to territory battles, but again, something thematic, something to kind of bring us into the world a little bit more. I think something that's on a lot of people's lists is doing some sort of like Helm's Deep type guild PvE scenario, right? That would be really, really awesome to experience as a guild. Let's just crank up that. I also think we are going to, maybe you don't consider this actual content, but I do think we're going to get new campaigns here. And I think these will be coming in Q1. Frankly, we just need new campaigns. So hopefully I'm just sort of manifesting this into existence. But we need new guild campaigns that come with increased purple mat drops and probably some green mats. I will not get off the soapbox until it happens. Free-to-play players need the ability to farm these epic ability materials. The calendar, the New Year's calendar was nice in that it gave 30. However, again, that is not something that is going to be a long-term fix to this problem. There's too many bottlenecks for free-to-play players. So I'm hoping we get some new campaigns, Light, Shadow, Guild, coming in Q1. I think that in Q3 and Q4, let me just start with this. I think we're going to get a smile grade before the end of the year. I'll leave it at that. At least the like first chapter we will get before the end of the year. And this is going to tie into some of the character releases I think could possibly be happening by the end of the year. But I think we are going to get a small grade, something that they've talked about. The way I'm kind of viewing things, it would be a nice sort of way to cap off what is going to be another year of content. I think this is definitely ambitious, but definitely doable, and things I think that have already been on their roadmap that they've talked about. Again, just talking about, you know, when they released the game, they had a bunch of journalists come in and basically they showed them a bunch of stuff, including their long-term roadmap. What they couldn't talk about, I'm not sure, but they did mention that some of this stuff was basically there. The multi-squad, the guild versus guild, that type of thing. I'm hoping the guild PvE stuff on there, besides raids, is like already something that they're thinking about. And then Nick mentioned that they were thinking about a smile grade. He's mentioned that multiple times. So I'm hoping that those are the big pieces of content that we get this year. However, I would also like to see, so maybe I won't put a date on it, but I would also like to see some sort of adventure mode, or not adventure mode, but more adventures like Sam's adventure. I think that would be a really great way to release another character in 2024. We should be getting another one of those. I really like those. And I would also like to see some sort of game mode where we can use an individual based game mode that uses our entire roster. So I think multi-squad has the opportunity to use sort of your entire roster in a PvP setting, right? Raids can sort of get like this, right? But, you know, once you get past 5 teams, then you're not using your entire roster. I think it would be good if they came up with some sort of creative way to use our entire roster. I think that was initially the big draw for Blitz in MSF, right? Was like you got to use pretty much your entire roster. Blitz transformed into something I think a lot of people don't like, including me, when I was playing MSF. But I think there are ways to be creative about this and do a game mode like that and then make it thematic as well. I think that would go a long way for the community. Do I think it's going to happen? I hope it's going to happen. All right. So in between each of these pieces of content, I think we're probably going to get some progression systems. So I think first up, we are probably going to see G11. And I think that's going to come around the same time as multi-squad PvP, but probably after it. So I think if multi-squad PvP is coming in Quarter one, I think probably right after that, we'll see an increase in gear level, gear 11. That's going to increase. And then that means, you know, not only are you going to have ways to access more pieces for G10, including purple essences and access to more crystals, but we're probably also going to be seeing an increase in glyph level, right? Because glyph level and gear level are tied together, which is an interesting thing that they've done. Now that I've kind of sat down and thought about it, is that they have tied two progression systems together. So an increase to one is automatically an increase to both. I'm not sure how much I like that. I guess we'll see how that plays out. I'm hoping that that kind of slows things down, but maybe it won't. I guess it works okay in Swigo with their mod system. Some of their mod stuff is tied behind Gear 12, right? Speaking of, I think we will get Gear 12 before the end of the year. I think it's just going to happen. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I think it's going to happen before the end of 2024. We'll see a gear increase to Gear 12. I think Gear 11 makes sense definitely before the end of the year and sooner rather than later, kind of after they get out the next big piece of content. But then I think, yeah, it's probably going to be Gear 12 before the end of the year. I do think that there's going to be other progression systems before G12. And one of those, I think, might be an increase in player level and in, obviously, character level then goes right along with that, right? So I think we'll see a character cap, like a level increase. Let me rephrase that as level increase to 70. And I think this could be coming in Q2, Q3. I would say it's probably going to come after any sort of guild versus guild, or if I mixed up the order and it's like guild PvE comes before guild versus guild, then after the guild PvE sort of stuff comes out, I think that'll also come with a level increase. And then later on, I actually think because there's a level increase, that gives you the sort of latitude to then add more skills. So you're going to add additional skills to the characters that they have in the game. I think it's probably better to do this earlier rather than later, meaning that they have a smaller roster of characters that they then need to add a bunch of skills to, unless they decide to do some sort of like, they unlock some extra skill at level 70 or some extra passive, or there's a number of ways that they could do that. But I think that this could come in quarter 3, quarter 4, which is a good amount of progression systems. Maybe it won't be this fast, but maybe, I'm not so sure. Next year, I think this is what we're sort of looking to see in terms of progression systems. And I'm hoping it's a little bit kind. And then as they add another progression system, they obviously ease up the bottlenecks that people are currently experiencing, which just reminded me. So the other MISC thing that I kind of wanted to talk about here is that I think that there's going to be 3 legendaries this year. I think that they're going to move to that sort of cadence and then move into like there's either a new legendary or a returning legendary every single month. That's again something I talked about with Celtic Owl, and I very much agree with him there. Trying to move towards that cadence, like every month has some sort of legendary event going on. And so I think that that means that they will have to step up how many legendaries that they're kind of putting out. And so I think that they're going to do 3 legendaries this year. I think that that means that the first one will be either in March or April, and then kind of spread out every 4 months. And then they start to kind of filter in reruns of Elrond and Thorin in there as well. Every 4 to 5 months, depending. I think that that makes sense to me, that they're kind of trying to build out that legendary system and then get some sort of, kind of like a robust way to start the game. Okay, what legendaries do I need to go to first so that I can accomplish this content and then kind of do these other things? Let's move on to character releases, because these are the ones I get wrong. Pretty much all of them I get wrong. That's just how it is. I get them all wrong. I actually think that January or February will be the Fellowship month. And I keep saying the next month is going to be Fellowship month, or I keep predicting that it's going to be sometime soon, and it just hasn't happened yet. But hear me out on this one. There are a number of people at the top end of the game who have started to unlock Gandalf. They've either just unlocked him or in the next month or 2 are starting to unlock him. And these are the people who spend on marquees. So I think what that means is that we will see Fellowship sometime in January, February, so that people can round out their Fellowship team. I think it'll be 3 characters: Frodo, Boromir, and Aragorn. This would mean that we are getting our first repeat characters here. And you may be wondering why 3. Well, I think if you're a newer player to the game, or you just haven't, maybe gotten into a good guild that's raiding routinely, yeah, or if you're newer, then you maybe don't have Gandalf. You're not unlocking him anytime soon, but this would give you sort of an opportunity to get a full fellowship team. They always refer to Frodo as the leader of the fellowship, so I think Frodo would sort of have an alternative fellowship leader role. And then they would have Boromir and Aragorn as well coming in there to play other roles within the fellowship. I think this makes a lot of sense to me because, yeah, a lot of these sort of top end whales are getting their Gandalf, not even the whales, but, top end players are getting their Gandalf soon. And then, these characters come out to round out that team. And then like 3 months from now, they become farmable, right? And I think that's when a good chunk of the free to play player base is going to start unlocking Gandalf and can start bringing up Gandalf as well. So that kind of just makes sense to me in my head and sort of a timeline wise, but that's all I've got. It just makes sense to me, but we'll see if it happens, right? I do think that we are going to get more Nazgul, and I think we're going to get more wargs. And I think this is going to be more of a shadow, maybe not completely shadow heavy, but we're going to be definitely more shadow heavy than we were this, first year, right? And I think there are a couple of paths you can sort of go down. And my guess is like, they've been doing this for a long time. So they have a better idea of how to plan these things out such that you can kind of, if they need to call an audible for whatever reason, they can just do that. And I think one of the paths is they could go down. There are only 2 shadow squads that are incomplete at the moment. The DG, the Dol Guldur squad, which was just released, right? And the Dunlending squad. All the other shadow squads now have like 5 characters to kind of completely round them out. And so you could take that, you could think about that, and you could be like, oh, well, maybe they're trying to build up some sort of connection or synergy or legendary around Dunlending. And an obvious one to choose from that would be maybe Saruman. So outside of doing like some sort of Dunlending Isengard team up with Saruman or something like that, maybe linking that to Dol Guldur, I'm not so sure. That's obviously a possibility, but I think another possibility is that they go this Gundabad orc route. And I think this is pretty interesting because you kind of go into the Third Age, and there's this area, Rovanion, which I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly, and it's got basically all the stuff happening, right? And at the end of the Third Age, around this area is Smaug, right? He's in the Lonely Mountain and into the previous kingdom of Erebor, and I think that would be a great way to sort of cap off like a sort of segment of content, essentially, where they could do a bunch of different evil sort of men. They could do a bunch of like Easterling sort of tribes, and then that way they can also get some more Nazgul in there, right? So to eventually build up to do a sort of Witch King team and unlock. Not that the Nazgul would unlock the Witch King, but just so that we could get a team of Nazgul led by the Witch King. So we'd start kind of on there. There's also there's dwarves in the area, right? The Kingdom of Erebor, Grey Mountain dwarves. And the Iron Hills is maybe, I guess it's maybe too far away, but there's a bunch of men, right? There are the Bjornings, but they're the men of Lake Town as well, Kingdom of Dale. They're also the elves, right? Thranduil leads the Sylvan elves in Mirkwood, and it's all sort of near Dol Guldur, so you get a little bit of a tie-in there as well. And eventually, maybe that would mean some sort of necromancer tie-in. But I think this is kind of a place and a time, this sort of Third Age around Dol Guldur in this Rovanion area, right? That they could explore a lot of. You essentially end this little content era with the Battle of the Five Armies in terms of either sort of guild versus guild or guild PvE type content, or you could do a Smaug raid, which is something I think they've talked about. And I think also this gives you a little bit of a stepping stone or tie-in to some early Rohan stuff, because basically after Smaug came in, right, there was a group of men around this region who then resettled by request from Gondor into the Kalanardhon region, which later ended up being Rohan, right? And I think that would be a really good tie-in at the end of the year, because that's when we know the War of Rohirrim is releasing, is December, I think 14th of 2024, right? So that could be a good possible transition point. You get through some early Rohan stuff in this particular sort of content, and then transition into maybe talking about the stories of Helm Hammerhand and Wolf and Freka, and you could do a lot of interesting Shatter Timeline stuff there. Obviously, Helm's Deep would be amazing to see. I think that just gives them a little bit of, you know, some options, basically. So I think this is a time, this third age, and in this area is a really good place for them to explore. It has so many different interesting interactions. It's got, it's got everybody, basically. It's got so many different people. They can really kind of flesh this out in a meaningful way. So that's kind of where I'm leading on. They start that off by doing something with the Gundabad orcs, who, again, are known for being these sort of hardier line of orcs. We might see Azog, but also apparently they're, bred very big wargs, and then we can start to see a bunch of wargs. And I think that would also tie in. It's got a Nazgul tie-in, it's got warg tie-in. It makes sense. We already got Bolg in the game. We can build out this faction. This is kind of what I'm thinking is coming in 2024. But I've been wrong pretty much every time so far, so we'll see. I also think it kind of works because the Gundabad orcs, especially if they go the Azog route, right? They kind of got this anti-dwarf synergy, right? But then they could continue to do dwarves, but they could do some Easterling tribes. This would lead to more Nazgul, anti-dwarf. Here's where the wargs come in with the Gundabad orcs. And then I think we could start to see sort of Thranduil and Mirkwood elves, Erebor dwarves, maybe some, again, I don't know about the Iron Hills, but there's so much kind of there. I would really like to see some Bjornings as well. We know that the first large character is going to be a shadow character. I think that will be a Dol Guldur spider. I think that makes the most sense to me. And it would also, again, start to kick off this sort of era that they could explore. Another thing, though, is that, they get all this stuff out, right? And they explore this particular era, ending with like a Smile Grade or something like that. And then that sort of sets them up to explore the War of the Ring the following year. And then they would be able to explore the War of the Ring while having all this other content already in the game. And I think that means that they could really start to build things out and make this game very, very big. So I think this is kind of what my rough 2024 speculation looks like. I want to continue to check in on this maybe every 2 months or so and see how well I'm doing. And then we'll just redo it completely if it looks like I'm just veering way off course. Let me know if you have any sort of pet theories that you think are going to be playing out here. I do think the Fellowship thing is happening soon. And then I think there are a lot of different options they could take this year in terms of content, but I do think the Rova Neon sort of saga, that era, in terms of content and character releases, makes a lot of sense to me. But there are, I think, many different avenues in which they can choose to go there. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching and take it easy.